We have with us a man who is heroic. He's the founder and chairman of the IDSF, the Israel Defense and Security Forum. His name is Brigadier General Amir Avivi, and he has now done a great job at educate the next generation of Israeli IDF officers for courage, for holding on to our land, for a policy that makes sense, because in the Middle East, when you give up your land, you actually give up your self-respect. Others don't respect you. Then you become a victim. And then other people are like, these people are spineless, and you get no respect. You don't have self-respect. You get no respect. And then you don't hold on to your land, and more people die. And then more jihadism suppresses other people. That's a mistake. General Amir Avivi, Brigadier General Amir Avivi, joins us right now. Shalom Aleichem, sir.
Hello. How are you, Shane?
Thank you so much for joining us. I know you gave a lecture tonight. How was your lecture?
It's very good in Rishon.
What was it about? What were you talking about?
What is needed to secure Israel for generations to come? It's exactly our subject.
So let me ask you this. Tell me a little bit about the return to war. That's what we're reading inside the news, that Israel's back, and I'm hearing all my friends are being called up. Are we back at war full time, or is this just a tactic to try to get the hostages?
It's not just a tactic to get the hostages. The overall plan includes eradicating Hamas as a governmental and military entity, conquering all of Gaza in 2 stages. But there is an understanding that as we move forward to reach the goal of eradicating Hamas, there will be opportunities to reach a hostage deal and get the hostages out. The army says clearly it's much easier for us to operate and do the job without hostages. When you have hostages inside, it endangers them. You have to act very carefully. This also endangers the soldiers. So we would definitely like to see the hostages being released and then being able to finish the job. What Israel is not going to agree is to have a deal where Hamas stays in power and we don't eradicate them. This is not an option. This is why it's so complicated.
Here's that video that I wanted to show.
Has launched a major new military operation in Gaza, seizing key areas with tanks, while continuing air assaults, reportedly killing dozens of Palestinians. Codenamed Gideon's Chariots, the offensive includes taking control of strategic areas. Troops advanced on Deir el-Balach, where ground forces had not operated during the war that began last October 7th. The troops reportedly advanced into eastern Deir el-Balach in a coordinated operation amid artillery and air cover. Mobilized forces carried out what were called extensive attacks as part of the opening moves of the operation and expansion of the campaign in Gaza to achieve all of the war goals, including the release of the hostages and the defeat of Hamas. According to Israeli defense officials, the operation would see the IDF conquer Gaza and retain territory, attack Hamas to prevent them from grabbing humanitarian aid supplies while moving Palestinians from northern Gaza to the south. Amid the warfare, progress has been reported at mediated ceasefire and hostage talks in Qatar. Defense Minister Katz claimed the IDF offensive brought Hamas back to the table and to reportedly propose a 2-month ceasefire with U.S. involvement. Israeli and Hamas delegations traveled to Qatar last week after the release of American-Israeli hostage soldier Idan Alexander as part of a direct agreement between Hamas and Washington and just ahead of President Trump's visit to the Middle East. The Qatari media is reporting that the proposed 2-month ceasefire would allow time for talks to bring an end to the war. According to the Israeli media, the proposal would free about 250 Palestinian security prisoners, while Hamas would hand over a list detailing the status of all remaining living and dead hostages on day 10 of the proposed ceasefire. Prime Minister Netanyahu has reportedly authorized the Israeli delegation to stay in Doha amid what is termed cautious optimism for an agreement.
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused. I'm hearing a lot of different things, and I think that all of us are a little bit confused. Are we here to fight this war to destroy Hamas and to hold on to this land? Are we here to make it so that the Gazans cannot live in Gaza anymore and will be moved out? Or are we here to negotiate with Hamas for some kind of agreement, some kind of settlement, some kind of ceasefire, getting some of the hostages out, getting a list out. It all sounds like it's unclear. And that, I think, is one of the problems with our leadership about this war. We've been fighting for a year and a half without clarity. What is the goal of this next offensive?
So I think that, that in the history of wars, you don't have many wars where clear goals of war have been set. In this case, there are crystal clear goals of war: to eradicate Hamas as a governmental and military entity, bring back all the hostages, and create a reality that never again there will be a terror army in Gaza. And Israel, throughout the war, hasn't changed the goals. The goals are clear, and all of them need to be reached. Now, at certain points, we prioritize different goals. There is a moment where we say we'll slow down the pace of destroying Hamas, but we'll release hostages. In other cases, we say, no, we'll push forward with destroying Hamas and not releasing hostages at that moment. Now, people ask me, I've been fighting for a year and a half. What changed? Why now it's different? What's different? And I say, everything is different. When we started the war, we started without enough munitions. We started with the understanding that we're starting offensive in Gaza, but we have to fight in the north. We have to keep the forces fresh in order to move them afterwards to the north. We cannot really concentrate just on Gaza. We had a different leadership in the army and also a different Ministry of Defense who thought that it's not a good idea to conquer Gaza, and it's not a good idea to apply a military control over the Gaza Strip. They were opposing that. We had a different administration that very fast, already in January 24, was pushing for a ceasefire and stopping the war. And now we are in a completely different reality. We have a new leadership, new Minister of Defense, new Chief of Staff, new commander of the Southern Command. They're all aligned. They understand that Hamas needs to be destroyed completely, that we need to conquer the area, and they are not afraid to talk about military occupation, about controlling the humanitarian aid, about dealing with detaching Hamas from its society and from the humanitarian aid. We have a different administration. We have plenty of munitions. Everything changed. And now we can really, really focus on the Gaza Strip and really push three main efforts that can help us, both eradicating Hamas and bringing back the hostages. One is completely destroying the leadership of Hamas, and we're doing that systematically. From the moment we went back to operate after the last ceasefire, in the first attack, Israel wiped out almost all the civil leadership of Hamas. Now we saw how Israel killed Muhammad Sinwar and Shabana, the commander of the Rafah, and many other operatives. The leadership of Hamas in Gaza is being systematically destroyed. As we are doing that, we approved plans to conquer the Gaza Strip. Now, it's very different to do raids or conquer. The way the IDF is operating at the moment, we saw that in Rafah, we conquered the area of Rafah. We destroyed all the infrastructure there. We killed all the terrorists. And now Rafah is empty, completely in Israeli control. And Israel is doing the same now in other areas in the center and in the north of Gaza. Every area that the IDF is conquering, the IDF will stay there and will systematically destroy all the infrastructure, all the terrorists, all the people will be moved from this area. It will be flattened and in control of Israel, and we're moving systematically into the Gaza Strip, sending a clear message every day that you don't bring us back the hostages. It's another day where we conquer more areas and completely destroy all the infrastructure and the terrorists in these areas. And it's going to intensify all the time. There will be a moment, I believe, where Hamas will say, wait, stop. Let's do a deal. They'll need a ceasefire. This will be an opportunity to get back the hostages. Israel is not going to agree to stop the war, but it will agree to do some kind of a short ceasefire, maybe a month and a half. to get the hostages. But
Yeah, but
the
Hamas is not going
overall,
to give up all the hostages. If you're going to play that game of the hostages, they're never going to give them all up. They'll always keep
yeah.
somebody.
So I think that probably there will be a deal for half of them, which is a lot. And then you'll have to continue pushing forward until there will be a moment where you will surround them in a certain neighborhood and negotiate, after conquering 80-90% of the Gaza Strip. You want to reach the point where they understand that it's game over. They have only two choices: or give us the remaining hostages and get out of Gaza alive, or die. There will be no other choices. And I think that I see a resolution both in the army and in the government to reach the goals of war. And yes, unfortunately, we have part of the media and a small part of the society that is, trying to stop the war, saying it's just about the hostages. It's not about, winning the war. It's not about destroying Hamas. And this is not the case, because Israel, yes, has a responsibility for the hostages, but also has a responsibility for the whole society and for the people who live in the surroundings of Gaza and for our soldiers and for all those who paid with their lives, to defend the state of Israel. We have to win this war decisively.
And
We
for
have
the
to reach
future and
all
for
the
our
goals.
children and for the next people not to become the hostages.
Right, exactly. You cannot let Hamas rebuild itself. And
By
and
the
and,
way,
and
I was with Minister Ben Gvir in the United States, and he had a great line that I thought was very nice. He said, if I was one of the parents, I would act like them. But I am a parent. I'm a parent not only to my children, but to the whole Israeli society. I got to make sure that this doesn't happen again to the next child and to the next person. I got to protect those people. I thought that was a good way of saying it.
yeah, definitely. It's really clear that any member of family of a hostage, will say we have to do everything to get them out, and we do. But we also have to reach, all goals of war, because if radical Islam wins, meaning if Hamas stays in power, this is not going to just impact what will happen in Israel afterwards and the way we'll be perceived in the Middle East. This is going to impact the whole Middle East. This might bring a collapse to moderate Sunni states. So when people talk about the prospect of signing a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia, normalization and so on, the Saudis are saying to Israel in a very clear way, you need to destroy Hamas, you need to win
Right.
this war. They are not going to normalize relations before Israel wins decisively the war in Gaza, because the Muslim Brotherhood doesn't only endanger Israel, it also endangers them. And they want to see a clear victory, and they cannot allow themselves doing peace agreements while there is still a war. They want to see an end to the war, but not a surrender. They want to see a decisive win.
So you told us something that's important. You said to us that the situation is different. We don't have as much of a northern battlefield right now. There's new commanders in Southern Command. There's a new defense minister, and there's also a new American president. Those are very important points. However, there was some lack of clarity this week. The Americans are providing all the artillery and all the armament that's needed, and that's amazing. Not like we had under President Biden. They're not telling us to stop the war, quite the opposite. They're saying take care of the war. And also President Trump has hinted many times this war should have never happened because we should have never given away this land. But at the same time, there is another change that's happening, and that is the closeness between President Trump and Qatar. And Qatar is an overt supporter of Hamas. They have said it every which way. They support the hostages, taking the hostages. They support October 7th war. They support every aspect of it. And they say it through their mouthpiece, which is Al Jazeera. And here comes the president of the United States. According to the White House, they signed a deal. President Donald J. Trump secures historic $1.2 trillion economic dollar commitment in Qatar. And so was this a victory for Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood, and jihadism, the relationship that President Trump made with Qatar? Did you hear in intelligence forums that like the Hamas and their friends are celebrating at this moment?
I don't think that Hamas would have come a day after this visit to the table to negotiate the release of hostages if they were celebrating. I think that they expected that maybe in this visit the president will stop the war in Gaza, will call for a Palestinian state. They had different ideas. He refused to meet Abu Mazen. He didn't talk about a Palestinian state. He didn't say that we need to stop the war in Gaza. On the contrary, talks about relocating 1 million Gazans to Libya. So they're very unhappy from the results. But I think that, Israelis, that they tend to look at the American policy just through Israeli eyes. Like everything America does is, has to do with Israel. And it's not the case. We have to understand that President Trump, when he entered, he started his presidency, the situation was that the U.S. has a debt of $37 trillion, 122% debts to GDP. That's almost double than Israel. The U.S. has, a gap in its trade of almost $1 trillion compared to what it exports, compared to what it imports. And there is inflation. The dollar, I remember, I think 25 years ago when I bought my first apartment, the dollar was 4.3, 4.5 shekels. 25 years later, it's almost 3.5. It's unbelievable. If the American economy was healthy, probably the dollar would have been now 8 or 9 shekels. So I think there is a big concern in the administration about these economical issues, and this is why this trip was mostly about signing big agreements and bringing, money into the U.S., but it was also about sending a very important and clear message to China and Russia. We are back in business. We are the bosses here in the Middle East, and especially talking about the Sunni world. I think this act, of involvement and leadership was very, very important. Having said that, I'm very disappointed with the decision not to continue attacking the Houthis and leaving us alone to deal with this. Don't think it's a good decision. And we're following, the talks with Iran, expecting them to explode at a certain moment and hoping that the president will realize that there is only one way to deal with them. And this is a massive airstrike on their nuclear sites.
So you are saying that the Qatar agreements are necessary for American economy, but you do recognize that that the Trump move towards complete alignment here in the Middle East with negotiations with Iran and the cessation of attacks on Yemen are not the way to go, and we have to defeat this jihadism instead of kind of accepting it as a fait accompli and making a separate peace with it. No, we have to keep fighting them. But here's my question.
This is what I said. I'm very unhappy about the Houthis, and I think we have to attack Iran, and we have to do it together.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you a tough question, because I see that you're handling tough questions very well. My question to you is, our leadership, both the prime minister and also just the way our system operates, is it ready to make big decisions? For example, to take out 1 million Gazans and send them to Libya or wherever else? Like, this is a big thing. A ship's got to come, pick them up, or it's got to go through through Sinai and through Egypt. Like, is there the will to take care of business? I have heard Prime Minister Netanyahu talk about Iran. I remember it was in 1999. I was a stagiaire. I worked at AIPAC in Washington, D.C., and I heard him speak about the challenge of Iran. Same prime minister, same country, Iran. And that was more than, that was like almost 30 years ago. And so it's like, are we going to actually make those changes? You get a green light from President Trump. He's like, take care of it. Yeah. Here's my vision. He released a video showing how he thinks Gaza should look like, right? But it doesn't happen. And the sense is that Israel's not ready to take on those big grand steps. It's not ready to put 1 million Gazans on some kind of boat and send them to a different place. It's not ready for that kind of level of change. It's not ready to take on Yemen by itself. It's not ready to take on Iran by itself, even if it could. So that's my question to you. You know the leadership. You know these people intimately. You know what they're capable of. Is our country capable of, let's not call it radical, but revolutionary changes in the situation in the Middle East? Are we capable of making those big changes?
So I can tell you from deep knowledge, first talking about Iran, that Israel is in full readiness to deal with the nuclear sites of Iran, even if we need to deal with this by ourselves. Israel is not going to miss the opportunity, this historical opportunity, after we destroyed all their proxies, after we destroyed their air defense. And we know that this is one shot, and for us it's an existential issue. So at the moment, Israel is saying, okay, let's, wait and see what will happen with this diplomatic talks with Iran. And already we are hearing the Iranians saying clearly they're not going to give up anything. They're pretty much laughing at the administration. So Israel is waiting and hoping that, at a certain point, President Trump will say, okay, this is, not going anywhere. And either will give Israel the green light to attack or lead an attack. One way or another, we're going to deal with this imminent threat and deal with Iran. As for relocation, when I came not long ago to the army and I saw the preparations that are being done, undergoing, it was amazing to see it. Who would have imagined the army, working on realizing the plan to relocate the Gazans. And it's happening, and by the way, we're relocating them daily. Not big numbers yet, hundreds. But for Israel, relocating 1 million Gazans, it's not a complicated logistical issue. We know how to do it. The only thing that we need, and this is something the Prime Minister said very clearly, we need countries that are willing to accept them. So when President Trump said, this is my vision, I want to relocate them, we need agreements. We need countries to give them visas. The motivation is there. The Gazan wants to emigrate. They need where to emigrate to. You cannot just put somebody on a plane if he doesn't have, on the other side, somebody that is willing to receive them. So if President Trump is serious, so are we. And we are very ready to do that. And Prime Minister Netanyahu said, we are embracing this plan. This is the day after for us. And we want to do that. But I think that it will become more relevant and more realistic once we conquer Gaza. You need to first take over the area and destroy Hamas. And I think that after this stage, there will be also a growing understanding globally that they need to emigrate, because Gaza won't be habitable. It will be pretty much completely destroyed because of the massive terror infrastructure that you have everywhere. And in order to dismantle it, you need to really destroy most of the infrastructure in Gaza. So there will be no other choice, and the world will have to agree and help also relocate them. So I'm optimistic. Wait and see.
All right, last question. I promised to let you go by 11, but so last question for you, and that is like this. I've heard, we all know that the Israeli army is highly motivated and very strong, and they really feel like there's a tremendous heroic and self-sacrifice ethos that's in our land. At the same time, this is one of the longest wars Israel's ever fought. I guess it's the longest, or depends how you count it. There was a few wars that lasted longer, but they were more like long operations. This is a war, and I've heard also rumors that there are some that the reserves aren't coming in at 100% anymore. People are tired. people's wives tell them, listen, either don't go into Gaza or don't go there or expect to stay married. And there's a societal pressure, not to mention the cost. At the beginning of the war, there was a lot of talk about the cost, and they stopped talking about the cost. Nobody knows what the cost is anymore. So are we still capable of going on this journey for another half a year or however amount of time it's going to take? Is our country economically, emotionally, societally ready for this continued operation? Or is there kind of a great need to return to bourgeois life, to get back to normal? Like, are we going back to normal? Can we handle this kind of continued warfare? You're a general. That's where you grew up. That's your career. That's what you think about. What about the average folks and the average Israeli? Are they able to stand this test?
So what are the options? If we really, push hard the coming 6-7 months and win decisively, we'll have a normal and quiet life, maybe for generations. If we don't do this last effort and really win in the coming 6-7 months, there will be no more normal life at all in Israel. And soon enough, we'll have to come back and fight again and again and again. So we really need to end this now, and we need to finish the war, and we are able to do so. And I think that, you see a very high motivation of the reservists to arrive, and I'm not saying there are not many reservists that have challenges and family and work, but the message of the reservists is clear. You call us, let us do the job. We want to finish this. We want to win the war. Don't bring us for another small operation, for going in and out and doing what we did in the last year and a half. We want to win this war. And for winning the war, they're more than happy to come and be part of this historical moment of defeating Hamas. And I think that the change of leadership in the army really created motivation. The chief of staff messaging and really empowering the army and the reservists and inspiring them. And this is very, very important. And we have enough people, we have enough soldiers, we have the munitions, we have the will to really win decisively this war. So, we tend to say that it's the darkest just before dawn. So, it's the moment we have to, push. It's hard. People have fought for a long time, some reservists for 500 days. But this is the moment really to put the last effort, and it's the responsibility of the government to make sure that this time we go all the way to total victory in Gaza and also, of course, in Iran. And if we reach that, we'll have a great future.
And Bezrat Hashem, with the help of God, of course. Brigadier General Amir Avivi, you've had many, many amazing positions in the Army. And you are also now the founder of a whole movement which people can connect with, especially IDF officers. And that's called the Israel Defense and Security Forum. In Hebrew, we call it the HaBithchonistim, which is a term meaning the guys who care about security, the guys and gals that care about security. And you're helping change consciousness in Israel. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, folks, that was Brigadier General Amir Avivi, and he's confident that we can continue to fight this war. Let's do it. Let's get to it. And let's not, of course, forget that the Lord has given us that strength. Hashem is with us. And he says, clear out my land from the haters. Get rid of the haters in my land. Get rid of the idolaters and the haters and the Israel haters. And just keep in the land lovers of Israel and lovers of God who want to sanctify this land. And I have this theory that God doesn't tell the Jewish people, clean out the whole world. He just says, you know what? Just give me my cubicle. Just give me my little space in this world, which is the land of Israel. Give me a little bit, and you'll see that the whole world is going to get cleaned up. Take away the haters. Take away the idolatry. Take away the things that make this land darkened. And there'll be amazing light in Israel and in the whole world,